Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special cast of Newscast 78. Tonight we are in the house of Mr. James O'Donnell, a survivor of the USS Indianapolis. Mr. O'Donnell, when did you join the Navy?
I was drafted in February of 1944, and they asked me what branch I liked, so I chose the Navy. Well, see, I was working at Allison Engineering, and I was what they call a machine repairman.
How old were you when you were drafted?
23.
What was your job on the Indianapolis?
Well, I was what they called a water tender. I was down in the boiler room where you made the steam that went to the engine room that made the ship go.
Did the Indianapolis set a record time going from San Francisco to Tin Juan in 10 days over some 5,000 miles?
Of Tin Yan, yeah, we did 29 knots.
Okay.
That's a record that I think still stands today. I don't think they're trying to set any records.
Did you know the atomic bomb components were on board?
I don't think the captain even knew, because one Sunday morning they came down with a bunch of Marine guards around these truckloads of stuff. They had two big crates and they put them in the hangar deck, and they had I guess the uranium or whatever it was, the components for the bomb, and two couriers with that went up into the captain's cabin, and they stayed there with that. And they had Marine guards around it on board ship, and it was shoot to kill. I mean, they didn't want nobody messing with anything. And the reason I say he went up to the captain's cabin, this was a unique ship. I may be jumping ahead of stuff, but this was President Roosevelt's ship before the war. And he went to foreign countries and entertained dignitaries on it. Well, when you see the captain's cabin, normally one ship has a captain's cabin. Well, this had two. So when the president was on there, he had one of them. And we was the flagship of the Fifth Fleet. We had an admiral named Raymond Spruance that graduated from Shortridge High School here in town. And of course, he was in that when he was aboard.
What did you think was happening when the torpedo struck the ship?
Well, I was asleep. And you know, before that, and the reason we had the atomic bomb was we've been hit by a kamikaze plane. That's a airplane that dove into the ship at Okinawa. We lost 9 men, had 26 injured. Well, we had to come back to the United States because we were hurt bad. The evaporators were blowing up. That's what you made the fresh water out of. Made the fresh 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 head out of. This head 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 made the fresh Roosevelt out of. Roosevelt 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 made the fresh Roosevelt out of. And made the fresh 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 out of.
So you were asleep when the torpedo struck the ship?
Yeah, I was asleep, and the first torpedo knocked the bow off. Right. And the second one hit back amidship about and hit a magazine. That's where the ammunition and stuff is. And it just ruptured everything and knocked all the communications out. I couldn't tell you to shut the engines down, so it just kept going forward and turned over on its side and went right straight down.
Did the Indianapolis get off 3 distress signals before it rolled over and sank?
All the communications were knocked out, and according to some of the fellows that were in that department, they got an emergency generator going, and they could see the needle weaving back and forth, and they sent a message. And we know that it was received because in Leyte there was a fellow that received the message and went and told his boss, and he says, I'll look into it in the morning. Another one started 2 tugs out there, and when his commanding officer heard about it, he called them back. Those are the stories we get. True, false, or indifferent, I cannot verify.
But those could have led to some of the reasons why.
Okay. Is it common to have a destroyer as an escort to protect a ship?
Well, you see, when we left Guam after we delivered the bomb, went to Guam. Of course, that was the headquarters of the Navy at that time. And he asked for an escort because we had no underwater, no sonar detection. And they said no. They knew that the submarines were out there because about 2 or 3 days before that, they had sank the destroyer, the Underhill. And then when we didn't arrive when we were supposed to, the excuse was that the combat ship may be diverted someplace, and so they just took us off the plotting board.
What was it like for you for those 5 days in the water?
Well, you'd look up and you could see airplanes flying over all the time, but they're probably coming back off a mission or something, and you know, they're not paying any attention looking down. Well, a man's head in the water from the altitude they were would probably be like a matchstick, and you're not going to see that. It was just a fluke we were.
How did you escape the ship?
There was a few rafts and the lifeboats. I don't think the lifeboats ever got off, but there was a few rafts got off and everything, according to some of the fellas, because they said they were in rafts. Most of the guys got Kapok life jackets, and if you were out there, and if you didn't get in a group and stay in a group, if you was out there by yourself, that was adios, brother. The shark had you.
How did the sailors act when they were in the water?
Well, they all tried to hold on to one another, the groups that I was with, and that way was the only way you could make it. Because some guys, after so long out there, and I'm sure I must have done it too, hallucinated, but some of them say, oh, there's an island over there, and they'd swim away. And you never see them again. So there's a ship out there. They'd swim away. You never see them again. I'm going down to the mess hall and get a drink of water. They'd dive down under the water and swallow a bunch of that salt water. In about 4 hours, you're gone.
How many people were in your group?
Well, it varied from the time guys would lose their hold and go away and everything. You know, you might have started with 50 and wound up with 20 or less.
How long did it take the Indianapolis to sink?
Ship went down in 12 minutes. That's what everybody estimates. That's, you know, if I'm waiting on you, well, 12 minutes is a long time, ain't it? Sometimes 12 minutes ain't very long at all.
Could you feel it when the torpedoes hit?
Well, you know, it felt the same way when we got hit with the torpedoes as it did when we got hit with a suicide plane. Just like it bounced the ship up and down about 3 times. Up and down 3 times. Up and down 3 times. Up and down.
When did the atomic bomb that you delivered with the Indianapolis drop on Japan?
We delivered the bomb on the 26th, I think it was, of July. And they dropped the bomb on the 6th of August. We thought that we had both bombs, but we come to find out later that we didn't. We only had one of them because they wanted to be sure at least one got over there. So they flew one over and we took one over. Ours was the first one dropped on Hiroshima.
Okay.
What was it like being in the water?
Well, you'd look up and you could see airplanes flying over all the time, but they're probably coming back off a mission or something, and you know, they're not paying any attention looking down. Well, a man's head in the water from the altitude they were would probably be like a matchstick, and you're not going to see that. It was just a fluke we were.
How were you found?
Well, there was a plane out there on submarine patrol, and a fellow from California named Wilbur Gwynn. And back in those days, you didn't get much mileage out of your antennas. So he's playing out a new antenna to test it out. And as he's looking down, he sees a big oil slick. Well, normally a submarine would leave an oil slick when it went down. So, boy, he thought I got me one. He went back up and took over controls and come in real low with his Bombay doors open, ready to dump a couple depth charges when he seen guys waving their hands. And so he went back up and notified his base, and they sent a PBY plane out, which was flown by a guy from Frankfort, Indiana, named Adrian Marks. And he landed in the open water, which was a no-no, and he got 56 guys out of the water. So and he was subject to court-martial too, but they didn't do anything about it.
Did you see the planes that came to rescue you?
Well, as a matter of fact, we were spread out over such a large area, I never seen either one of those planes. The one that spotted us or the one that landed in the water.
How were you rescued?
I was picked up by an attack transport, the USS Bassett, which picked up most of the guys. See, when they got there, they put their whaleboats out. And then the whaleboats picked up the guy and went back to the ship, unloaded, and come back out and got some more.
How long after the Indianapolis delivered the atomic bomb to Tinian was it dropped on Japan?
We delivered the bomb on the 26th, I think it was, of July. And they dropped the bomb on the 6th of August. We thought that we had both bombs, but we come to find out later that we didn't. We only had one of them because they wanted to be sure at least one got over there. So they flew one over and we took one over. Ours was the first one dropped on Hiroshima.
How many torpedoes did the Japanese submarine fire at you?
He fired a spread of 6 torpedoes at us, got us with 2, and he also had some ketons on there. You know what a keton is? It's a fellow that rides a torpedo and steers it into the ship. He had 6 of them on there, he said, and they wanted to do the job, but he wouldn't do it. And another thing, I got to admire the man. A lot of people think, well, you know, you'd be mad at him. Well, you didn't like it, but he was doing his job, and his crew wanted to surface and, you know, machine gun the rest, kill the rest of the people that survived, but he wouldn't do that. Now that was their normal procedure, but he wouldn't do it. And you know, after the war was over, he became a Shinto priest.
Why do you think it took people so long to try to clear Captain McVeigh's name?
Well, they tried to clear it all along, but they just didn't get the job done. Yeah, they court-martialed him in December. Of course, see, this happened the 30th of July, and when the war was over then, they sent all the ships to Japan to get the prisoners of war, which was the right thing to do because some of those guys had been there 2 years to 4 years, you know. And normally after something like that, you'd have got evacuation home right away, you know. Well, this happened the 30th of July. I got home the end of September.
Oh, why do you think the loss of the Indianapolis was not made public until long after Captain McVeigh was court-martialed?
Oh, it was made public before he was court-martialed. But when they come out in the paper on August the 14th, announcing that Japan had made up their mind to surrender, and there was a little column over there that says USS Indianapolis sunk with the largest loss of life. We lost 880 men.
What did you do after the war?
Well, you know, a lot of guys don't talk about it. Yeah. And the only reason I did was, you know, downtown on the Canal Walk, we have a national monument.
Yeah, we looked at that this summer.
Well, some big businessmen here in town made up their mind that the Indianapolis ought to have a monument. And it was in 1990, they asked me to come and tell the story because they had a film, about a 30-minute film that they had rigged up from others off of there, you know, parts here and parts there. And so I went and did that. So it was 1994 I talked about it, unless you told your family or some old Navy guy you got jawboning with and talked about it, you know. But other than that, why, he didn't talk about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Donnell, and thank you for watching.